Greetings, grandparents, soon to be grandparents, and hope to be grandparents. It's such a joy to share just a little of our grandparenting experience with you. When Dr. Baker asked me to do this some time ago, I was happy to do this. Always, I'm happy to talk about grandparenting, but little did I know we would have an experience in our lives that would cause me to think more deeply, cause us as a couple to think more deeply about grandparenting and our grandparenting style and all that goes with it. It was late that evening. We had already retired, May 17, when our son, Christopher, called. It's one of those calls you don't want to get late at night, you know what I mean? And I answered the phone, and I could hear in his voice that he was trying to sound upbeat, probably so as not to alarm me, but something was really wrong. I'm his mom, I know. But he went on to say, Evan is okay, and he knew that I would need to hear that first. But he's been in a very serious automobile accident. Well, whatever that means, Nord and I, right then, were ready to jump in the car and race right to his side. But Chris said no, he wanted us to wait. He and our wonderful, wonderful, loving granddaughter, Stephanie, were at the hospital with him. So Evan had the ones he needed by his side. He had his parents. And grandparents are important, but there are times when we need to step back and let parents be parents. And difficult as it was, this was one of those times for us. Chris said, wait until we know what's going on. And so it was sort of back and forth through that night with texting and phone calls until they figured out that there were no internal kinds of injuries, but lots of broken bones. But from the very beginning, we were just praising God that he was alive, that God had spared his life, had protected him, that all the prayers that had gone up for him all of his life were coming to this point. And so, difficult as it was, I'm being honest about that, we were able to pull back, to hold back, and not rush there, but just to support them from a distance, to stay in communication, to hear what they were saying, and not to press, but to let them take the lead. They needed to do that. And perhaps it's because we are leading all the time, so much all the time. So that situation, and by the way, Evan is going to recover. He has some time to mend broken bones, but he's going to recover. But it's this situation that caused us to think more about our role as grandparents and what all of that means. You know, it's said that there are 3 major grandparenting styles. There is the remote grandparent. You know, those are the ones who perhaps don't really want to be grandparents. They are arm's length all the time, kind of a stay back, stay away kind of relationship, if you want to call it relationship. And who knows the reason for this now? I'm not criticizing, but it's that style. They're kind of a hands-off. And then there is the involved grandparent, those who are intrusive, just too involved, always there. That's not appropriate either. And then what is called a compassionate grandparent, and I hope that that's who we are. But I'm giving you these 3 because in this short time of grandparenting, we have been all 3. Not at the same time. We're not quite schizophrenic, but over time and in certain situations, we have had to be each one of these. For example, when our first granddaughter was born, after a while, several years into her life, it became apparent that it would be wise for her to live in our home. Well, hallelujah, we were happy about that and just enjoyed every moment of it. But even so, it was very tricky. You see, we wanted her to feel comfortable, to feel completely at home, to feel that she could come to us, that she could expect of us anything that any parent would give and be to her. Yet, at the same time, we had to help her to know and always remind her that we're not her parents, we are her grandparents, and that she and we must honor her parents as her parents. So that was our experience as a very involved grandparent. We think it turned out all right, that we were able to balance everything enough, because once she transitioned out of our home, we still had family relationships. And that's what it's all about, right? Relationships with God and family, all rolled into one. Well, not long after that, several years actually, but it seemed pretty soon before we realized that we were thrust into a situation that took us into a situation of becoming remote grandparents. That was the worst fear of our lives. We never wanted to be remote-style grandparents. We wanted to be maybe not involved, that we were taking over, but never remote. But for the first time, we had to live away in a place that was at some great distance from our family and from our grandchildren. So we thought, how are we going to make this work? We know we're supposed to be there. God called us there to do that. But at the same time, we know God wants us to have relationship with our grandchildren. So we decided that the most important thing that we could do would be, of course, to maintain relationship through communication as frequently and in every way that we possibly could. But living at a distance and traveling the way we traveled, we really had to be creative. And so we said, we're going to have to decide what is important, what is going to be most meaningful to the grandchildren and appropriate with the children, their parents. So we decided we would make priority Thanksgiving, Christmas, and my mother's birthday, which came right at the beginning of spring. So we determined that unless we absolutely could not make it home for these 3 occasions, that we would always be at home with them. And so we would rush home, sometimes directly from overseas, right into our home that we maintained. And we would come in and decorate and prepare and do things as though we were really living here. We wanted the grandchildren to come in and feel that they were coming into our home. So we did this for many, many years. And the same at Christmas time, unless one of the others wanted to host Christmas. And then we would participate as though we were right here with them. And then we would always host Mother's birthday celebration. And we did these things for the extended family because we found that extended family is very important and that it is the grandparents' role to kind of keep the extended family together. And we thought about this. We didn't do a good job of being part of the extended family as parents. And so we learned some lessons from that. And we said we are going to uphold, honor, fulfill our role as grandparents in that regard. So we did. Now, these occasions, these celebrations were always one of the favorite times for our grandchildren. They started calling them, particularly Thanksgiving, family feast. We laugh about it, but they loved it, and that was important to them. And through these celebrations, we started some other traditions. And one thing is, I would always have my grandchildren cooking with me, and I taught each one of the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren to cook, standing on chairs or step stools right at the island in my kitchen. They have those memories forever. And from that evolved each one cooking a dish for the family feast. So we have what we call the signature dishes for each of us. Each one has a signature dish that we prepare for the celebration and for the meals. The grandchildren love that. They still talk about cooking. They still cook with me, and they are good cooks. Now, from that, something else, this experience of having to be remote grandparents. You see, we wanted to be the compassionate kind that balanced everything and that maintained relationship and that could perceive from everybody's perspective, everyone's point of view, what something felt like or what it would mean to them so that we could all conduct ourselves appropriately. We wanted to be compassionate grandparents, but it was hard, but we did it. We think we did it. Even though our situation was that remote situation. And so what we did, in addition to those kinds of things, we determined that we would always find a way to have our grandchildren with us at least part of the time during the summers. And it was going to be difficult, but we were creative and God blessed. It's really more God blessing than our own creativity. But with our schedules, we determined that we would get them with us. The parents agreed, and over the years, they trusted us more and more with more and more time with them during the summers. And we knew that the grandchildren would not want to spend all day, every day, playing Uno or cooking with grandmommy and granddaddy. They're growing up, and grandchildren can kind of, they get their own things. They want their own things, and they might pull back and pull away. But we were able to do this for many years, and we always provided for them, the kinds of activities that they like. Basketball camp, soccer camp, math camp that the parents insisted on, science camp, and STEM camp, and every other kind of camp that we could come up with so that we could balance that, all that the grandchildren wanted, and all that the parents wanted for the summer. It was all good for us because they were with us. So we did all of those kinds of things with them. It stretched us a lot, but it was so important. One day, when she was just about 5, the little one prayed, "Oh God, and please bless Granddaddy as he drives us back and forth. She said like that. She got it. She knew what was happening and appreciated it. We appreciated being appreciated. You know what I mean, grandparents? So we did those kinds of things. And then we also did something else that Evan and his younger brother, Connor, told us just this past weekend when we were visiting with Evan, that the favorite thing, the best thing they liked was traveling with us. Oh, it just touched my heart. I wish we had more time to talk about these things. And I know that he was telling the truth because not long before his accident, Evan traveled with us. We went to New Zealand. And let me tell you why this is so important and what it said to us. Evan is working very hard to finish college and to save enough money, working 2 jobs, to buy a house when he graduates college. He doesn't take off for much of anything. And when we mentioned we were going to New Zealand, wonder if you think you might want to go? He's asked a few questions, of course, as he would, about the timing and so forth. And then without thought, he said, "Yes, I want to go." He said, "I'll take off from work." He said, "I'll arrange to do my classes remotely." That said, I love you, and I love traveling with you on so many levels. Anyway, we had a great time, by the way. These are the kinds of things that our grandchildren love. And if you know anything about us, you've seen us somewhere with these grandchildren in tow, at workshops and seminars, at general conference session for the last 3 GC sessions. They've grown up there. They know people from around the world just from GC session. Vacation Bible school at almost any church that has a VBS at the time. We can work it into our schedule. We've been to everywhere, coast to coast that we can think of. Some of the major amusement parks and the zoos. They love zoos. We've taken them out of the country, all of them, at least into Canada. And of course, as I said, Evan, as far as New Zealand, we have stretched financially and emotionally and with our energy. But these were the best investments we could ever make. And I believe it's the right thing. let me close by giving you a few do's and don'ts. These are kind of the summary of what we've learned over time in grandparenting. And I'm going to press quickly and maybe focus on the don'ts first, because grandparents, we need to learn what not to do. It is just so natural and so easy for us just to rush in, but we shouldn't. We cannot if we want the right kinds of relationships. So don't tell your kids how to raise their kids. That's one thing that we've learned. If you have done a good job with them or done anything right with them, they're going to remember those things that you taught them when you were their parents. If they let their children spend time with you, it's because they remember the rules, they remember the routines, they remember who you are as parents, and they're comfortable with that with their children. But don't tell them how to parent their children. And don't forget how to say no. Not long ago, we were with the grandchildren, and our sons were together with some other people all around us, and we heard them say, "Who are these people? We don't remember them letting us do these kinds of things," whatever it was. Yeah, you've probably heard it if you're grandparents, and you will if you're going to become grandparents. Well, really, don't forget to say no. We have to be responsible with the children. My sister-in-law, my dear, sweet, lovable sister-in-law, has a great story. When one of her grandsons was 13, she and my brother had different styles, but she was the one who would just love them, just give them everything and do everything. And the 13-year-old asked her to do something or for something, and she thought, and she said, "Well, no, I'm not going to do that." And she said, he gasped, and he looked at her for the longest, and he said, "What did you say?" He couldn't believe his ears. And she repeated, and he said, "You've never, ever said no to me before." Well, if you've never said no and they're 13, it might be a little late, but it's not too late. So learn and do the responsible thing. And don't disregard the parents' rules, not just their role as parents, but their specific rules, bedtimes and what to eat and so on and so forth. If I can throw in quickly, my mother violated that rule, and I've never told this outside the family, but when our first son was born, she gave him things to eat that we had asked her not to give him. And later it came out, and she said, "I just couldn't help myself, and so on and so forth." Don't have time to go into all of it. It didn't break the family relationships, but just don't do that. We should never do anything like that. We should always teach the grandchildren to honor their parents. Adventist is one of the commandments, right? We need to be sure that we honor the parents and that we teach them to honor their parents. Another thing is, don't be too pushy. Just kind of relax. We even see this in the literature, the research, and this is not that kind of thing, but it validates one of the things that we have learned. Calm down, relax, let God do the heavy lifting, and just enjoy the grandparenting style. And never compete for your grandchildren's affections. Never compete with the parents. Never compete with the other grandparents. Remember, they have 2 sets of grandparents, and in some families, 3 or 4, because of situations of remarriage and blended families and all of that. The grandchildren belong to all of us. In our family, we have developed our own relationships with the other grandparents, so we are close, and we support each other in grandparenting. So let me summarize the do's, perhaps, and I've really covered them all, but accept the limitations of your role as grandparent and not parent. Keep all kinds of disagreements to a minimum. You, as the grandparent, have the ability to do that, and often that is by backing up a little bit. It's okay. Show that you are trustworthy. Prove yourself to your children. Didn't you tell them at some point, "I can trust you when you conduct yourself in trustworthy ways"? Well, the tables may have turned. We have to demonstrate that we are trustworthy. My mother was not trustworthy in that one regard. as I said, we didn't fall out over it, but we love each other, we stay together, and we must demonstrate that we can be trusted. And then we don't tell them how to parent, but we can ask them to tell us how they want us to grandparent. It is appropriate. And something came up not long ago in a conversation with someone that I know is just heartbreaking for them. If you are ever denied the opportunity to share your faith with your grandchildren, don't push it. You know, we can sometimes say we know we are right and we're going to do this and that and the other. Never attempt to indoctrinate, because the children have to have their own relationship with their parents and with God, yes. But it's best if we work on building the relationship and maintaining family, loving relationships. Work on our own relationship with God and let the Holy Spirit guide and speak to all of us together. Let us make grandparent what it is, one of the top joys of long life. Grandparenting is awesome. When you get time, just review in the Bible all of those examples of grandparenting, the good, the bad, and whatever. But learn the lessons from them, and let's determine to be the very best, the wisest, most loving grandparents and parents that ever walked the face of the earth. Enjoy grandparenting, and God bless you and your grandchildren.